Hello, I'm OtakuSolutions. Continuing from the controller section, I'll give you a guide on the skin part. When skinning, I first want to point out that the rigging hierarchy and the skin bone hierarchy are clearly separated. It's mainly used for game production, but of course it can be applied to animation work as well. This tool is set up with rigging configured to match the fact that a lot of animation is now produced through game engines. We always have the rigging hierarchy and the skin bone hierarchy. All skinning data belongs to the skin bone layer. Now it's time to do the skinning. The skinning process is done as usual. My UI is currently set to Korean, but yours will be in English. So add bones like this here, or add skinning like this. It would be good to start with the pelvis. Let me assign simple weights to the pelvis. Select the pelvis, and assign weights like this: thigh, knee, and so on. There's also a way to set up envelopes, but we'll probably avoid envelopes. Envelopes change skinning in real time, which increases skinning complexity. I prefer simply entering values per vertex for simplicity. I've thought a lot about this skinning part. Because 3ds Max's skinning approach, and I say this somewhat carefully, is very old. It's a legacy situation. This video was recorded in 2026, and the existing skinning approach in 3ds Max is quite inefficient. It doesn't match current trends. Personally, I don't recommend using 3ds Max's built-in default tools for skinning. Even using this rig, it would be a very painful workflow. Especially when working with these basic skinning tools back in the day, game production relied heavily on them. But the quality of mobile games back then wasn't as high as now. Polygon count and joint count were much lower, so weight structures could be kept very simple. But these days even mobile games come out at near console or A quality. So you need to apply weights with complex bone structures. For example, twist bones here, here, and here. Maintaining the joint's area of influence while finely tuning weights within that area is genuinely difficult. I'll cover this in a separate video, but in that kind of situation, OtakuSolutions doesn't just point out problems. Whenever we identify a problem, we always bring a solution too. So we created a new tool. The tool is called SkinLayer Studio. What is SkinLayer Studio? As of 2026, the most efficient skinning technique in my view is the layer-based approach. What is the layer approach? Think of Photoshop. You stack layers on top of each other. It means layering them one over another. It's also like oil painting. You keep applying paint to complete the picture. From that perspective, when skinning, the pelvis layer contains only the pelvis. The spine layer has only the spine with a mask painted in like this, Neck is painted this way, and the mask is painted like this. The thigh is also painted exactly like this. The knee is painted this way too, all structured like this. The mask here isn't quite right at the moment, but even so mirroring it is set up so it mirrors conveniently. In my view, this approach makes managing skinning data very rational and manageable. This approach, providing an environment where skinning can be applied to complex bone structures, is the best option at the current point in time. So we're demonstrating skinning movement well here, and we're currently preparing this skinning tool internally. This tool runs in 3ds Max. The viewport is simply embedded inside the tool. When you go into animation here, you can see it syncs together. When explaining this tool, as I mentioned, I'll organize the various issues around why 3ds Max skinning is so difficult, and give a brief overview of how to use this tool. The process itself follows the Photoshop layering and oil painting approach to skinning. I'm sorry to be introducing another tool inside the BipedPlus tutorial series, but 3ds Max's skinning was simply too inconvenient to ignore. I don't want you working with skinning the old way. It's a genuinely painful process. It doesn't match current trends. Our character is named Mabel, and Mabel isn't a particularly high-quality character compared to games out today. It's not a complex structure compared to modern games. But even with just this bone structure, using the existing tools would require a significant amount of labor. The game characters you're working on right now are probably even more complex than this. Ultimately, because the quality bar in games keeps rising, the skinning stage has now become genuinely difficult. Back when games were played on small screens, skinning without twist bones was perfectly fine. The market has been moving toward high quality. Even facial rigs now install dozens of bones, and the old tools just don't fit today's trends. So, having identified the problem, this is the solution I'm offering. Beyond that, as far as I know, most 3ds Max skin tools are oriented toward full automation rather than layer-based management. Full automation works fine for the body, but once you get into facial bones, tools oriented that way will likely be difficult to use. Something like our SkinLayer Studio, even if it requires human input, takes a step-by-step, zone-by-zone management approach, which in 2026 seems like the most rational method. And this weight tool isn't slow either, it's actually quite fast. Even I was surprised while building it. The weight tool operates really smoothly. The quality is very high and the results are smooth. I'd strongly recommend it. I've been going on for a while, but most 3ds Max skinning tools are oriented toward full automation. Though as far as I know, there are one or two plugins that take a more structured management approach and seemed like good options. So if you have such a tool, feel free to use it, or if you don't think there's a good fit, you can use this one. I wanted to mention that this is an old problem with 3ds Max skinning, so it's somewhat unavoidable. Still, I'm glad we've made this solution and implemented it. I'll try to align the release date of SkinLayer Studio as closely as possible with BipedPlus. I would greatly appreciate it if you could make sure to use this tool. I originally planned to explain more about skinning, but since you need to apply skinning to this character before using the skinning tool, I covered it here first. In the next video, I'll explain how this tool is used. Thank you.